Oh, hello! Okay, and we are back for session 2 of the Procreate Beginners Course, which they have on YouTube. This one is probably out of the 4 my favourite one, because I quite like the cute little night scene artwork that they get you to create, and they also talk a lot about the different colour options that you're seeing on the screen now. So they talked about palettes, which is not something I've ever really used before. I just used the second one along from the left, which is like the classic option where you just move the node around to try and find the colour you want. But palettes, I was like, that's actually a really useful tool. So they get you to set a new palette up as a default. So you can click on the 3 dots on the right hand side to set a palette as a default, so that it comes up when you're looking at the other colour menu options for colour picking. But also what it had me thinking about was whenever you do any kind of shading and you want, say, 6 different colours, this is the perfect way to learn how to have all those colours on hand easily and not have to go back and find them or use the eyedropper tool, because they're just all in this little colour palette for yourself. So once they get you to set up a new colour palette, they then take you back to the disc option. So this is where the outer ring has the colour that you're going to select, and then the inner circle is the tone, and you literally just pick it and then tap the tile in the bottom bit that I'm tapping now underneath where it says night, and you then get all the different tones that you want all in one go, and you can select them, press and hold like I'm doing now, to move them around, to delete them. And the nice thing is, once you've made that palette, that's just there. You can go back to it whenever you want, which is really cool. I definitely think this is one of those things where I'm yeah, I'm going to use this going forwards now. So once you've got the palette all set up, they get you to pick the background colour. And then sort of as a mini lesson, I guess, within the session, the next thing they look at is how to make perfect lines or perfect shapes. And I knew a couple of these, but not all of them, so this was also quite fun. So obviously with a straight line, you can draw or attempt to draw a straight line or even a wavy line, and then hold it by keeping the pen still in contact with the iPad, and it will then snap to a straight line. And then likewise, if you draw a curved line that is more obviously a curve, it will snap to a nice curve that is sort of a bit smoother. And the same applies for circles, triangles and squares. So I was aware of the straight line and I was aware of the curve, but what I wasn't aware of was the other ones. So I tried to draw circles, perfect circles like this, but I didn't realise that if you tap with another finger when you've finished drawing the circle, it will snap to a perfect circle. So that was pretty handy. I don't know if I'll use the triangle or the rectangle ones as much, because the same principle applies. You try and draw a triangle or draw a rectangle and then hold the pen on the canvas for it to snap into what should be a perfect one, but I don't know if I'll use that as much, so we'll see. The other thing that it's just going through at the moment is it's teaching you about the threshold line, which is something I had noticed but didn't know what it was and wasn't aware of it. So this was really useful for me and is actually going to save me a lot of time. But when you drag and drop the colour from the top right hand corner into a shape, a lot of the time there's this weird crispy line between the fill of the shape and the outline of the shape. And so I've been going in with the brush tool afterwards, after filling in certain parts of artwork by hand, and I didn't need to do that. So at least I know how to get around that now. But basically, when you drag the colour and drop it in, there's this bar that comes up at the top which is called threshold, and you can move the pen from one side to the other, and it gives you a percentage where it bleeds ever so slightly, so that it's then matched with the outline of the shape. Depending on what brush type you're using will then obviously depend how much out of 100% you need it to bleed between the fill and the outline. So yeah, I was oh my god, I've been doing this for a couple of years now, where every time I fill something in with a colour, time and then going back in over it by hand to fill in the gaps. I never needed to. But that's on me. So there we go. But at least I know now. We can see it happening on the screen now. It's got that threshold going back and forth. But yeah, I'm definitely going to use that going forwards too. So then the next thing that they teach you is how to edit a shape once you've finished creating it. And this one, I don't know if I'm going to use it that much for the stuff that I do. But essentially, when you've completed drawing a shape, like a basic shape, you can click at the top, just under the solid grey bar where the gallery and all the tools are. There's like a little extra bar that comes up. And you can click edit shape and you can then kind of like play around with it a bit more. So I mean, that might be useful for some people, but I don't really see it being something that I use that much, because the curves and the straight lines are like the main ones that I'd use, and then maybe the occasional circle, but that's probably about it. Anyway, so yeah, that's the like little mini sort of lesson before they get you to start doing the night scene. But what they then get you to do is use the erase tool to make this circle into a moon. And one thing I thought was really helpful to know was that when you, and I hadn't thought about this before, and I don't really know why, but basically, if you draw in one particular brush, you can then pick the same brush as the erase tool, but it means that, like now, how I'm essentially erasing part of the circle to create a moon, the edge on the inside looks the same as the one on the outside, and if I need to neaten it up, then it looks like it's all one thing, and it doesn't look like I've just robbed part of it out. And yeah, I do use that every now and again, but not in the way that it made me think about it when we did this, so that was handy. The other thing that they got you to do in this is on that top tab that you can see where I've just pulled down, there's like a little grey bar when you click into the colour, and if you drag it, it brings your palette onto the page rather than having to click in and out of the colour menu. I'm not quite sure how I feel about this, because I like sort of having the ability to see the whole page, and I did feel like at some points I was moving the palette around because it was getting in the way. So it may be useful, especially like with having the palette a bit more accessible for shading and stuff. I think if I can make it a bit smaller, because it looks like you should probably be able to shrink it, I hope at least, then I think I might make use of it. So as we're moving along, they kind of give you a quick little refresh on layers. So they get you to add in a handful of layers for different phases of the clouds that are behind the moon. So that was handy. And then they also teach you how to name a layer. I think they teach you how to name a group in this one as well, or that might be the last one. But yeah, they get you to like name the moon here. So if you tap on it and tap again, it brings up this option menu, one of which is rename. For some reason, when I rename my layers, I get this tiny keyboard, and then on a rare occasion I get a full keyboard. I don't really know why. If anyone knows why, then I don't know, I guess let me know in the comments. The next thing they get you to do is learn to use Alpha Lock. So this is something where, like, I've seen my friends at work who have iPads and draw on them in our studio have used Alpha Lock, and I've never really fully understood it, but I think one of the great things about doing this Procreate course is the woman who is leading it, she explains things in really simple but effective ways, like how when she was talking about the layers are effectively different sheets of glass, and you paint on each one, and the order in which you place them depends on what shows on the screen effectively. But the way that she explained Alpha Lock was really good as well, and she effectively said, like, if there's a layer that has a section on it, a shape that you've painted, so like the cloud for instance in this one, the way she gets you to add dimension to each layer of the cloud is by alpha locking each layer, so that when you do then paint the next layer on it, it just touches the bit that's already painted and not the bit that's, I guess, blank. So that was definitely handy. I think you can see it here in a second. So yeah, here you go. So she gets you to like pick one of the airbrushing tools and just really lightly press on each layer, like a light version and a dark version on each cloud, so that it just goes onto those sections. So that's, yeah, I quite like that. It's nice to actually know, like, and understand those things, because I think things like alpha lock and clipping mask, they're two very useful things, but I just haven't really invested the time in getting to fully understand how to use them on a day-to-day basis. I think what's really good is that, like, all those things I'd kind of seen within the app, or like been like, wonder what that is, but I can't be asked to look it up, or I'll check that later, and that kind of thing. I'm actually learning what they are now, and that's really handy. So I think going forwards, I may do one of the other courses that I looked at, because I looked at a few other websites that had like courses that were more specific or that were paid for. So I do think I'll probably still do something like that. Like, I'd really like to do more of like an anime or a manga kind of course, because that's the kind of drawing style that I really like. Or just like, I need to get better at doing things simply rather than putting like incredible amounts of detail in that no one's gonna see. So yeah, I think this is definitely a good starting point, and I'm glad that I picked to do this one first. And then I think what I'd probably do is take a little bit of a break from doing the Procreate courses, do a couple of creative videos, and then come back and do a more like specific one that I've paid for, and show you guys how I work through that one. Anyway, not that I'm going off on a tangent, well, I was, but this that's happening right now is one of my favourite brushes, because it's just really pretty. But there is a glimmer brush, which is essentially like little stars, little sparkles, and they get you to use it, but they show you how to edit a brush for the first time. So I've only edited, I think, 1 or 2 brushes. I have like the technical pen, which I've edited, that's got a bit of a delay or a stability on it, so that it's smoother. This one, it gets you to edit the spacing on it so that it's not quite so intense in terms of like how many stars are on the page. And it was good to just kind of have her explain the different sections of that, because that's a little bit more advanced. So she doesn't go into it too much, but it's nice to sort of see the brush studio and be like, right, okay, so here's the basics of how you can change it. But she also shows you how you go back and can like reset them to their original form, just in case you edit it too much and I guess get lost. Anyway, the thing that I'm doing now, I think we looked at this last time, but I can't remember, is Gaussian blur. So this is one of the effects on the actions tool list. So if you look in the top left hand corner, there's like a little spanner symbol or a wrench. And if you click on that, there are options for what you can do to things on different layers, and one of them is called Gaussian blur, and it essentially lets you make things like a little bit glowy. So I've done that on the moon, so that's why it's kind of a bit more glowy. And then she also gets you to double click into a layer, like what I'm doing now, double tapped into it, and she shows you not just the opacity, which is below the layer, that you can change as well as on the left hand side of the screen, but she gets you to go through and have a play around with the different modes of how the item on that layer blends with the ones below it. So the options on that menu, it takes the layer that you're on and it changes how it interacts with the layers below it in order to create different effects, which I'd never even, I don't think I'd played with it before, but it was actually really handy. Definitely something to keep my eye on for if I'm trying to make something look a bit different, or just want to see what might happen. I'm not really sure why my screen's gone so bright on here, so apologies that you can't see all of the detail on this beautiful piece of artwork. It will be a little clearer in a second. So finally, the last thing that they teach you in session 2 is how to add text. Luckily they don't allow make you like keep it on the final artwork, because it looked a little bit like bleh, in my opinion. I don't know yeah, I like it, but text is something I've played with on Procreate quite a lot, and is very handy. So I already knew how to use this, but it's essentially in the actions menu. You can insert text, and then when you tap on the text, it opens a menu for all the different fonts and colours and spacing and all that kind of thing, and then you can tap the cursor to make it a bounding box come around the outside of it, so you can move it around the screen. But yeah, that's where they leave it on that one, so I will leave it there too. Oh, this is a time lapse. There you go. That's it. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this, but thank you for watching, and don't forget to like and comment and subscribe, and I will see you for session 3.